You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to episode 69 of Making Tracks. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me as ever is the man who put the Thor in Scunthorpe and the hero in Clitheroe. It's Mark Mulcaster. Mark, how you doing?
I'm very well, and that's actually not as bad an introduction as I was expecting, so I breathe a sigh of relief, I think.
What have you been up to? We're literally, I mean, as we record, and we've got to say this, This episode is the rawest, the most unedited episode of Making Tracks we'll probably ever do, because right now, what time is it? It is 2:45. Yep. There's no time to edit. This is live without a net. So if we make a real big cock up, then it goes out to the entire universe.
That's okay.
But how's your week been? That's all right, isn't it?
Fine.
How's your week been? Have you been busy?
My week's been fine, and I haven't been busy because I'm now broken up from work pretty much and enjoying the Christmas holidays. So, and of course, now in Tier 4, so can't go out and do any Christmas shopping, can't go to the gym. So I've been at home, and like yesterday, I watched Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and all the good Christmas Star Wars stuff. So yeah. How about you? How's your week been?
Similar. Finished work, so work was wrapped up yesterday, so that's done now until January, thank goodness. So I can focus on Fantha, which is always my favourite thing anyway. So yeah, so it's good. I've got all the presents. I think I've got all the food we need, although I keep eating it, so I have to keep buying it again, which isn't good. Today, special episode, because our main topic of conversation will be the freshly announced The Book of Boba Fett, which we talked about in the last episode, and I think we kind of assumed that in similar way to season 1 of The Clone Wars was A Galaxy Divided and season 2 was The Rise of the Bounty Hunters. I think we kind of thought that The Book of Boba Fett was the title of season 3, but of course that turned out not to be the case. Season 3 of Mando is season 3 of Mando, and The Book of Boba Fett is its own now ongoing original series. I mean, I was not expecting Lucasfilm to nail it down quite so succinctly.
From what I remember, we kind of even mentioned during our kind of chat about the Disney Days investors call and all that, but actually there was no mention of Boba Fett or the Boba Fett series, which had been rumoured online and in various different podcasts and stuff. So yeah, then to get this, obviously it was a massive surprise at the end of chapter 16, but I don't think anybody was expecting. I know certainly many of my friends weren't, because I had to tell them to go back and rewatch the credits. But yeah, so this was nice, and also that's just it. We were thinking possibly could this be the title of season 3 of The Mandalorian? Is this like a focus shift in The Mandalorian? You know, they had talked about during the run up to season 2 that the focus kind of shifts away from Din Djarin a little bit in this season. So, you know, could this have been like the culmination of that? And actually it was going to be a Boba Fett story. Or in my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe you could almost have 2 stories running concurrently. And as you kind of said a couple of weeks ago, you know, you could do something like they've done in Game of Thrones, where you've got so many different story elements and stuff like that of different families. And in this case, you could have the underworld kind of element of Boba Fett and him rebuilding that. And also then you can have the Bo-Katan and the Din Djarin aspect of them, maybe, you know, freeing or, you know, trying to take back Mandalore. But to get 2 new series is amazing, and it sounds like they're going to be pretty close together in terms of release dates as well, which is fantastic.
It does sound, it all sounds amazing. We're so lucky, and hopefully there'll be more Star Wars coming before then. I mean, next episode of Making Tracks, we'll talk about the Disney Gallery season 2 Mando episode. We'll get right into that, which is out on Christmas Day. But today's episode is a bit special. We've got a special guest coming on very shortly, Paul Bateman. He was a great friend of Ralph McQuarrie. He's a skilled artist himself. So we're going to talk to Paul all about Book of Boba Fett, season 3 Mando, and probably loads of other stuff. So we're joined today on Making Tracks by a friend of the show and a friend of the site, somebody who you might not even realise you see his artwork every time you visit Fantha Tracks, because he designed our lovely logo. Paul Bateman. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, yeah. Mandalorian's been amazing, so I'm very happy. How about you?
Exactly the same.
Yeah. Can I actually just hold my hands up and say I didn't realise that artwork was done by Paul?
Ah.
So I have learned something today.
There you
So
go.
I was this old when I learned that Paul Bateman did the artwork. So that's pretty awesome.
What you don't know is every time you look at that logo, Paul gets a penny. So, you know,
Yeah, right.
he's fine with it.
I was doing such a good job keeping it secret too. Now Mark spilled the beans. It's
Yeah.
terrible now. That's
It's
it.
Christmas.
I'm-
It's my
I'm
Christmas
ruined.
gift. It's my Christmas gift to
Yeah.
the world. Well, you just mentioned it, Mandalorian, and the recently announced, like, couldn't be fresher news of the Book of Boba Fett, which is hugely exciting. We've been talking about it on Making Tracks for obviously since season 2 started and way before. And then last episode when that end credit sting came up and it said the Book of Boba Fett, and we kind of thought maybe this is the title for season 3, like Clone Wars used to have season titles, but no, it's its own thing. So your thoughts on that, Paul? The fact that we're finally, after all these years, getting a Boba Fett TV series.
It's amazing. It's quite amazing. I mean, first whiff I got of the fact that something was going on in that department was when the shooting schedules were knocking around online somewhere. I tripped over them and went, oh, look, it looks like it's 2 different shows and it's not just The Mandalorian. So there's definitely something happening. And bingo, yeah, we're getting a Boba Fett show. So great. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's only discoloured slightly by the fact that it's landed, right when we've just lost Jeremy. But there's something kind of poetic and beautiful about that too. So, it's kind of sweet.
It's often the way, isn't it? We lost Dave Prowse only a few weeks ago, and then within a few days they announced Hayden Christensen's coming back to play Darth Vader. So these things kind of feel like they're meant to be, don't they?
It's just, I just can't believe it, really. And when you're a fan of this, you've been a fan since the 70s. I think it's very easy to think back to when Star Wars was fresh as the daisy and just remember what it was like to be a fan back then, and just think there's no way we could have pictured this just wave of new media that seems to be on its way to us. I mean, 10 new shows, 11 now, right?
Yeah,
so
11.
It's crazy, all that entertainment on the way, and there's bound to be a lot of it that's wonderful, bound to be.
Yeah, the odds are too much in our favour in that sense. You'd like to think. So given that there's so much stuff coming, then I mean, it feels like we're covering a lot of ground in terms of the chronology, in terms of the timeline. We're going back to the High Republic era, which, from what I'm hearing, is about 50 years before Phantom. It's not as far back as the books, but it's a bit more at the end of that era, so that's interesting. And obviously we're coming right up to our current present with Mando, Ahsoka, Rangers, and now Book of Fett. What are your feelings on there being so much content now coming? Because Star Wars has always a little bit been, it's the circus coming to town. It only comes every now and again, and now it's on tap fairly regularly. Do you think there could be hazards there in there being too much Star Wars?
Who, me? I don't think so. I mean, my feeling, I think we mentioned this the other day, Mark, didn't we? I think we were chatting online.
Yeah.
That I just look back to the days when Star Trek was kind of really in its stride, and we had things like Next Generation and Deep Space Nine running simultaneously. Didn't they overlap for a little while, a couple of seasons or something?
Yeah, they did 3 seasons.
So if you look back then, and when shows were traditionally kind of 20 to 25 episodes long, so you're really looking at, back then we were looking at nearly 50 episodes a year just with Star Trek, weren't we?
Yeah.
So this, if you start averaging it out, they all seem to be kind of quite mixed seasons. But even though we've got stuff like Andor that seems to be running about 12 episodes, we've also got other shows that seem to be only running about 4 or 5 episodes. So you start averaging it out, even with all these shows, you're still looking at about 60 or 70 episodes, which to me just sort of seems like not a huge deal. I can appreciate that fans might think, well, we're so used to getting one movie every 3 years or something. Yeah. But it seems overwhelming. But for me, 60 doesn't seem that many. It seems like a sensible amount for a brand like this, especially when it's all divided up and out across a couple of years, So, yeah, I don't think it's a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, it can't...
I want more.
More, yeah. It kind of feels more manageable than, can you remember when we kind of got the announcement they were going to do a film every year? And I think a lot of people went, oh, that seems like a lot of Star Wars, and we're going to worry about Star Wars burnout. But I don't get that impression from that announcement. So it's Boba Fett, or the Book of Boba Fett. Is that the series that it's really got you kind of like, excited, or are there other ones from that announcement that you kind of think, oh, that's going to be interesting?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, initially I wasn't that excited about the sound of Rangers, although Rangers sounded interesting to me just because it was John and Dave. And I've liked The Mandalorian so much that I'm just excited about the fact there's a show coming from them. But as a concept, it's kind of vague, isn't it? You hear Rangers and you think, is this kind of a cowboy thing? Is it a Lord of the Rings style kind of, out hunting for Jedi thing? I mean, it could be anything at this point, couldn't it? We're not really sure what we're getting. And then I know this morning, I think it was announced that it was set immediately after Return of the Jedi, which I think is really interesting because that does kind of feed into the idea that maybe, it's got more to maybe do with the rebellion than we realise, or I don't know. I mean, I suppose that's an assumption too. It could be anything, couldn't it? But I like the idea that it's closer to the original trilogy era because, that's my sweet spot. So I don't know. Did you guys hear about that? They announced this morning something about it being straight after Jedi.
No,
I didn't.
I've not heard that. No, I've not heard that. But
yeah.
No, that's good news.
It's earlier than The Mandalorian, so that's good.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because that's the period that I'm really interested in. Is that kind of that transition from the Rebel Alliance to the New Republic.
Yeah.
And and kind of like beating down on the remnants of the Empire and just kind of trying to really kind of get back, wrestle back for the galaxy. I think that could be interesting. So.
But do you think now the technology's got to the point that it has, where they're confident enough that they can walk Luke Skywalker into a scene, and confident enough that they can take you back to Jabba's palace and make it look just like it did in pretty much in '83, give or take a few knocks and bumps? Do you think that then opens up the storytelling possibilities to an even wider degree? Because whilst we want fresh new stuff, and we've certainly got that from Mandalorian, there's definitely credit and currency in going back to places that we love and seeing things that we like, and not just for fan love or easy hits, but to actually wrap us even more into the story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I always liken Star Wars now. But this is something I've said a few times, I think. But I always liken Star Wars these days to Superman, and the idea that the original trilogy, when you consider it like Luke's story, the fact that he starts out as this little kid who's kind of naive and a bit annoying, and then eventually becomes kind of close to being a proper Jedi in Return of the Jedi. Yeah. So you it's almost like watching 3 movies about Clark Kent, and he doesn't really get the cape till the last reel, And then all of a sudden we had a 10-year gap, and then when the movies came back, they're all about Jor-El, his father, not him. And then again, you leap forward another 10 years, or however many it's been, 15 years or so, and the next movies are finally back on Superman again, but he's already hung his cape up and he doesn't want to know anything about flying. So, so for me, it's like, where are all the movies about Superman flying around? So it's a stretched metaphor, but the gist of it, I always hoped that we would eventually see Luke Skywalker in action. And as of yet, we've really only had that scene in this week's Mandalorian to feed that kind of desire. So I'm just delighted with it. Even though, and I can understand why people are kind of critical of the CG and stuff like that. Yeah. But for me, it's just a good sign of Lucasfilm really having some guts and understanding what people want. So I think it opens up all kinds of possibilities. Plus, we've seen these movies get revised and shows get revised so many times. I mean, look at just the other week we had the guy walk into frame, didn't we?
Yeah, good point.
So it wouldn't surprise me at all if this gets finessed a little bit over time.
That's interesting you say that, Paul, because me and Mark actually mentioned that on the show the other day. Now that Disney put their products out on a streamer, and they control the source of the content. There's nothing to say, like replacing the puppet Yoda in Phantom and then making it digital. You know what I mean? They could do that overnight at the click of a finger, couldn't they? If they want to upgrade and finesse, like you say, any of the effects, it's completely within their permit to do now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I always sort of try and remind people, I mean, this is like, I've had family members who said to me, like, do you use traditional materials or do you use computers when you do artwork? And I was like, well, mostly computers because time's a factor. Yeah. And you'll occasionally get the odd reaction from somebody generally who's in the 60s or 70s. They're like, don't you miss drawing? And you kind of have to explain, I'm actually still drawing. Yes. It's just a different tool, Yeah. And I think bearing that kind of in mind, I think a lot of people just assume it's the tools are the sole reason why facial replacement and stuff works well. But in actual fact, a lot of the time it's about talent. There are a couple of people who are really, really good at this stuff. And the guys who did all Michael York's face in Ant-Man was a particularly good one,
Michael
where you
Douglas,
got quite Michael Douglas, Michael Douglas, and you got quite a protracted sequence with him in where it's just perfect, in my opinion. And I think that the people that do that are really, really good. So it's just a question of kind of like who they specifically get involved in it too. And the technology is advancing all the time. Like Disney has its own research arm, and they have a YouTube page, and it has a bunch of stuff that just shows you what R&D they're up to. And there's a huge number of facial capture and facial change kind of projects on the go at the moment, and they're spending a lot of money on trying to perfect that technology, and they're trying all kinds of different approaches. So they're not just doing what they do now and hoping it kind of works out. They're trying all kinds of different ways of doing it. So I think if anybody's going to completely crack this to the point where it always just looks perfect, it's going to be Disney Lucasfilm. So I'm just glad they've got started. I love talking. And,
Hi, this is Dave Chapman, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Tarkin's a great example. Guy Henry, is in the outfit, but he's got all the stuff on his face so they can digitally alter him. And essentially, to a large degree, that's not a million miles away from an actor or a performer wearing a latex face makeup, or what it is. Essentially, it's a makeup. He's giving the performance. It's his voice, but the makeup is the CG, if you like, and Hamill was on set for the rescue, and it's his voice, and it's him there, and they're reacting to him. But of course, the makeup, inverted commas, is the artistry of ILM to make him look like he did 30 years ago. Do you think that's something that will continue going forward? I mean, Hamill's not going to be here forever, so presumably at some point that would have to hand over to another performer to inhabit the character. What I'm really trying to say is, do you think Luke Skywalker will always look like Mark Hamill? Or do you think that they'll get to a point where they're confident enough that it can be somebody else?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess a lot of it's in the hands of the audience. I mean, Twitter sometimes kind of dominates decision making in a way that I think is probably unhealthy a lot of the time. But I like the fact that they're not ignoring the fans either, and that they're taking into consideration what people want. I mean, they should do that. So I don't think they're about to hurry up and make Luke look like somebody different, but it's a question of degrees, really, isn't it? I mean, if you're looking at a cartoon, it's one thing, but if you're looking at something that's photoreal, we all kind of expect it to look like Mark. I mean, I don't know what he's given them permission to do in his contract, but who knows? And all I can tell you is, back when I was working on Harry Potter, I had a full facial and body scan like a couple of times. And it's quite weird. It's kind of like, like when you go to the dentist these days and they just scan your head with like a weird kind of MRI thing. And it's quite strange because they give you this huge document that's basically, because that was Warner's, and it's like, it basically talks about having permission to use your data in perpetuity, and it talks about the distant future and new technologies and new ways of utilizing your data and stuff like that, and it's pretty airtight. So if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, obviously. But if you're comfortable with that, then when you sign this document, I mean, it's clear that these companies can basically do what they want with this stuff going down the road, and it's kind of up to them to do the right thing, So I think we can expect to see some of these actors living on after they've left us behind. I think it's going to happen, but.
Yeah, so does that mean that we're likely to see some more Paul Batemans floating around the Harry Potter universe?
God, I hope not. Apparently I'm about a 20th of the crowd in a lot of the movies, so they just keep sticking different hats on me. So if you just see some hairy weirdo with a daft hat on, it's probably me.
Well, funny enough, I've got to say, I watched Philosopher's Stone last night. It was the last thing I watched last night, and the whole sequence where Snape's cape gets set on fire by Hermione, and you're sitting top right, looking down and all that. So there's many hairy Batemans in that one.
I mean, is there a risk? Do we think there's a risk that actually, by potentially, as the technology gets better with de-aging and stuff, are we, could we be kind of sacrificing, introducing new performers as different characters? I mean, if they start to heavily rely on a digital Mark Hamill to do Luke, but and not suggesting it's Sebastian Stan or whatever, but another actor could come along and could potentially take on Luke and actually, present a different kind of perspective to the character, which I suppose is kind of like the interesting thing about when you do recast. I mean, obviously it's so difficult with Star Wars because we love the characters and we're so familiar with their faces. But at the same time, you kind of think, Is there if they over rely on it, is that potentially a risk as well?
I don't think I think they'll. It's just a tool like any other, really.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it's one of those things where they'll take advantage of it when they need to, because I'm sure they'd far rather actually have the actor in there. I mean, it's just, filmmaking has always required body doubles. It's always required stunt people and stand-ins, all the time. I mean, I've even worked as a stand-in myself, so it's one of those things where, they're just always going to need that. So there's always going to be it's always going to be easier to make a movie if you've got two of the actor, So for me, it seems pretty inevitable and kind of unavoidable. But it's I mean, the film industry at the same time is so litigious that I'm sure nobody will be looking to take advantage of any actor or anything in a hurry, because I'm sure it would turn and bite him on the bum, So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it will just be a handy thing to have, and the audience will either embrace it or they won't, But I'm sure the second any actor sounds like they're not happy about it, that they won't be able to do it. So
it's like anything. If it's used judiciously, then it's sensible, isn't it?
I'm just excited to see Luke back. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't wanted to see this? I mean, I was taken by surprise by how much I reacted to it, because when music, I could feel music shift, and it went into something that was a bit more orchestral than he normally does, and it was like, hello, this is a big deal. And then obviously you see Luke's X-Wing go by, but you don't know for a fact it's Luke's X-Wing, so it's like, is it going to be Dave?
Yeah, I thought exactly
who's it
that.
going to be?
Yeah.
Right. And then I just thought, no, music is cueing us like, hey, look, look who this is, And then the second I saw the hood, it was like, they're going to go there, aren't they? And then it was, as soon as I saw the glove, it was like, yeah, that's Luke. Clearly it's Luke, And it just took the air from right out of my lungs. So I remember just kind of going, they've gone there.
Yeah.
And by the end of the show, Athena was like, why are you crying?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell her. I was like, ooh,
Well, I said to Mark on the last episode, I said I think I did more cardio than I've done in like 2 years, because I was up and down out of that sofa like, that's Luke.
Well, you really?
Oh God, yeah, that's the. And Ruth
funny,
noticed
Mark.
the gloved hand. It was Ruth went, didn't he have his hand chopped off? I was like, well done. But and then obviously when the saber comes out, that's it. But yeah, totally, it wrecked me, completely wrecked me.
Yeah, Athena was so sweet to me. She was just like giving me a hug and going, "Are you all right?" I was like, "Yeah, it's just."
Yeah,
total meltdown. It's bizarre the ability of these things to just kind of grab in and grab you by the heart, isn't it? But I think we've all leaned. I mean, there's certainly anybody that's tipped 30 and been a fan of these movies for a long time, I think we've all leaned on Luke in one way or another, haven't we? And when I was a kid, I really kind of looked up to Luke and Han, and I think I've said before, Han taught me how to, what cool was, and Luke kind of taught me how you maybe should live your life, So, these guys are important to me. So I'm really happy that Luke's back, especially when all the other characters have been kind of bumped off in the sequels. It's nice to have some kind of a return. Because you kind of feel like that's it for them, don't you? And then here they are.
So that's one of the great things about announcing all these shows, is that because they do skip around the time. Well, like you say, I didn't know about Rangers, so Rangers being right after Jedi, Mando being 5 or 6 years, sort of Dark Empire era, if you like, and we've had the sequels, and we're going back to the High Republic, and obviously Cassian, Andor being set just before, 5 years before.
Andor looks amazing.
So looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
So we really
You've seen how big the sets are. The sets are enormous. Yeah, really big. I'm amazed because of they're investing. I mean, everywhere's investing heavily in virtual shooting environments at the minute, virtual spaces like the Volume. so I just kind of thought, well, clearly at the moment with the virus and everything going about, they're going to take full advantage of that, and I bet set construction's just not really on their radar in a big way at the moment, and then to sort of see all these images of the Cassian sets going up, Cassian Andor sets going up. It's just wow. I mean, clearly they've got something big planned for that. I mean, that just feels like kind of Bond meets the Rebels or something,
Yeah. It has. I mean, it has that kind of vibe of like the sequel to Rogue One, like Rogue 2. So and
prequel, I suppose.
Well, exactly. More like a prequel. Yeah. So, and that's
sequel would be weird, wouldn't it? Just be like dust blown about on the planet.
A bit of a
load of graves.
Two sandcastles.
Rogue 2.
Yes.
But with Boba Fett, the Boba Fett series, coming back to that briefly, you go back 13. You mentioned volumes. You go back 13 years, so when Lucas was toying with the whole Grady Ranch thing, and Underworld was a project, and everybody was expecting it because it was announced. It was that in Clone Wars, wasn't it? And it never came to pass. And now we do finally get that Fett series. You've got to wonder how, or will there be any influence from that coming into this? Because it kind of feels like it's something that's been on. You know what I mean? It's always been there, but it's never come to fruition. And the fact that it's an ongoing series as well, I think we all expected it to happen, but for it to be a limited series, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look back at that footage that leaked about about Underworld's, when they were just doing test shots and stuff, weren't they? And it was very much of the time it had quite an 80s vibe to it, But I think it's going to be difficult for them not to cross into similar territory. I don't know whether or not they would just kind of grab an old script and rework it. But, I mean, maybe there are ideas in there. I mean, if they're not avoiding picking up from the EU, I'm sure they wouldn't think twice about pulling from George's, previous show and stuff if there's something that's appealing to them in there. Especially being as, clearly Dave has such great respect for George that he genuinely wants to follow in his footsteps. So it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it, that he might want to help himself get a bit nearer to that by using George's scripts, But I don't know. I mean, I was interested when I think one part of The Mandalorian, when they were looking at the map, trying to figure out where things were at, and they were trying to figure out what was going on with, was it Moff Gideon, where they were tracking some? I can't remember. Anyway, but they were looking at the map, and it was it looked like North Shador kind of location. Yeah. I know you're the map expert, Mark, but it was in that vicinity, So I was thinking, I wonder if they're going to bring North Shador into canon. In fact, I don't know if it already is, but I just thought that would be great to actually see it in a TV show. I'd love to see North Shador turn up.
Again, that's another Dark Empire touch, isn't it? Because I think with this episode with Luke turning up, one of the thoughts that was out there was, is that actually Luke, or is that Luke with two U's?
Luke.
But it was that whole Dark Empire the Empire era.
Funny.
And North Shador very much a Dark Empire kind of thing. That's a great point about North Shador, whether it's canon or not. I'm sure it must be in one of the more recent novels. I'm sure it must be, but it's certainly in the map, like you say. You think if you're bottom right in the map, sort of Tatooine, working your way up the map, and North Shador sort of halfway up the map on the right, isn't it? So,
see, there you go, proper fan.
He knows.
Crazy. If I ever get lost in the Star Wars universe, I'm going to be calling Mark up. I can't find my way around.
You don't need a Tom, you need a Mark. That's what it is.
Yeah, right, a Mark. Yeah.
But now we've got Boba Fett now, and there's no indication of how long after the end of season 2 that scene with Fennec and Boba is at Jabba's palace, or we should call it Fett's palace now. So that could be months later for all we know. We don't know what's going to happen. Season 3 could take place completely before that even occurs. What do you think? Do you think that now we've got these series, 4 ongoing series now, do you see that there's clearly great potential for overlap? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think they're going to bounce off each other like Buffy and Angel used to bounce off each other, and DS9 and Voyager, DS9 and Next Gen used to bounce off each other? You see that sort of happening?
Well, it sounds like they're all in the same time zone, Mark. So I think they all are intending on everything converging. So I think they are having a cross show kind of convergence at some point. So however they do that, I imagine it's like the end of the season. Probably all the episodes will bump into each other. That's what I'm anticipating, is they're probably going to go all be heading in the same direction, and then the last episode of one season will be the week before the last episode of the next one, and you'll be able to follow it through that way. But at least that's what I'm guessing. I mean, I'm happy that they went back to Jabba's palace. The nerd in me immediately went to. I remember talking to Ralph McQuarrie, to anybody who doesn't know Ralph, and saying, I was asking him about one of the paintings that he did, and saying, what was the deal here, Ralph? And he just said he wanted to know what the back of Jabba's palace looked like. He just, it's just one of those things where he knew it had to have a door, and he wanted to kind of, picture it clearly by painting it. So it was just one of those things. So having tried to get into Ralph's headspace a little bit when it comes to the Star Wars, or, the thing that's always perplexed me about Jabba's palace is what we've actually seen of Jabba's palace is actually a tiny part of it. If you look at the building, it's enormous. It's like the size of Wembley Stadium, and we've only seen a little room and the basement, but this is like, the Albert Hall or something, it's absolutely massive. So there's loads of stuff inside there, I imagine, that we've not seen yet. So it'd be nice if they explore the place a bit. You know, we see more than what we've already seen.
Was it the Illustrated Star Wars Universe book he did with Kevin Anderson, where you sort of
he did.
They sort of replicated on Jakku, I think, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those sketches have been lying around for a while, but he didn't really kind of flesh them out until the Illustrated Guide. Yeah,
it'd be wonderful if they could, like you say, the references are all there. I know the cross sections went into some depth, didn't they, with some of the interiors.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption is, I mean, how do you guys feel about the whole kind of the book of Boba Fett thing? I mean, my assumption is that it's kind of, it's almost like saying, you know, getting the story, getting the lowdown on somebody, you know, kind of, and I think that something that's the most obvious. I think if you sit down in a room with a bunch of creatives and say, and just grab a bunch, I mean, just imagine grabbing a bunch of your friends and saying, okay, we're all Boba Fett fans. What's the sweet spot? What do we want to talk about? I think almost everybody would go to the, how does he get out of the Sarlacc pit, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So my feeling is, although it seems to buttress up against, Mandalorian right now, and there's clearly we've got Tamura in the suit, and we've got so far, I think at some point in the story, I think we're bound to at least have either half an episode or a whole episode that's got to be about how he got there, you know, because I'm sure that's got to be a really interesting story for Boba Fett fans, you know.
Oh yeah.
We're bound to go there.
There's definitely a story there, isn't there? It's got to be. I mean, you know, the book of Boba Fett could be literally, you know, like his little black book of vendettas he's got.
Yeah,
names on
folks have said that. It's a good idea. Yeah.
And Bib was just the first one that was available to get. So
Bib,
right?
Yeah, Dengar, Bosk. You know, you could call them all back. You know,
do you think you're going to get Simon Pegg as Dengar? What do you reckon? Hope not.
Funny, my voice just went there. I love Simon, but not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right, all dried up. Yeah. I think we're definitely going to see a lot more of the bounty hunters that we're familiar with from Empire. Yeah. I think we're bound to get a whole bunch of those. I think that it makes perfect sense to go there. And I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd love to see some Hutts.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah. I mean, like, how old would the baby be? I mean, that's been a while, right? I mean, so she's a kid.
Be Grogu age.
So, Junior's got to be formidable by now, you would think.
That's a good call.
Yeah. I wonder if he looks like his dad or if he's totally different.
I hope he looks identical.
It'd be funny if he was like really chill, you know, really just totally like, hey man, it's all good.
Mellow the Hutt.
Yeah.
Not interested in being a ruthless gang lord at all, you know. But it would be great to see a CG Hutt, and I think they could do that. I mean, clearly I know it's different when it's hard surface models and stuff, but if they've had the guts to kind of go with Dark Troopers, and we've had giant crate dragons and all that kind of thing, so it's totally possible that they could be breaking out the CG Hutt, I think, at some point.
They actually built. I mean, there was rumours a few years back that they built. I can't remember what season of Clone Wars it was, but you did see a whole sort of cartel of Hutts in one sequence of all varying, because there's shell Hutts and there's different types of Hutts, isn't there? And there was rumours that they'd actually built a load of Hutts, and I just wonder whether or not there's the scope to do that, because obviously animatronics now is so much better than it used to be. And with CG Hutts, they've never had, apart from the one in Phantom Menace, which I think was pretty much bang on, they've never had much joy beyond that. You know, the special editions, they never really got it right. But I'd certainly love to see more Hutts.
Yeah.
That feels like a given, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, it'd be cool. Yeah. I think we maybe need a revisit from the guy that was in the Marvel comic too. You know, the one that was the pretend Hutt.
Yes. Got his name. I blanked on his name, but yes, I know who you mean.
Yeah, you know, shouldn't I? The guy that's kind of walrusy or whatever. But there's so much good stuff in all that old Brian Daly, territory that I'd love to see. I mean, although I'm not sure everybody shares my opinion about that kind of thing. I was talking to one of the guys from Hasbro the other week, and we were just talking about play sets, and I was explaining that the Death Star play set was my favourite thing as a kid, but that I'd like to see the Law's Homestead as a play set. But, you know, of course the joke always is, where's the play appeal? And all you can do is sit your fingers down and have them have breakfast, you know. That's about it, really. Have breakfast or get killed by stormtroopers.
I want that food blender. I want that food blender, yeah.
Right? Yeah, go change evaporators or whatever.
That's your next HasLab project, and
right.
And the first tier is basically a burnt Aunt Beru and Owen. That's your first kind of tier kind of like reward.
Yeah, there are some really fun like fan figures out there, aren't there, with the Force figure and stuff.
Yeah,
Have you seen that?
Order and Debris.
Yeah.
But if they, if they get into the whole vet thing, and it is, let's say, like Mark says, let's say it is a hit list, that gives you some scope. He's got Jabba's Palace as a base now to work from, and he's obviously stomped his authority down there. And it's clearly not the place it used to be. There's nobody in that courtroom. Yeah. It's not the same. What Jabba was doing and what Bib was doing, clearly two completely different things. Or that's the on the face of it, anyway, because nobody would have got close to Jabba like that before. But with bouncing off the back of that then into season 3 of Mando, now that you've broken up the little fellowship, the Mudhorn clan has been broken up essentially. Grogu's gone off with Luke and R2. Mando's now stood there with the Darksaber in his hand and Bo-Katan saying, I've got to take it off of you in combat. Cara Dune's presumably taking Moff Gideon back to the New Republic. And he gets double his fee because she brings him in alive, and all these different things that happen. Yeah. Where do you foresee season 3 going now specifically in terms of Din? Because now he's a loner again without a ship as well, because obviously Bob has jetted off in Slave One.
Yeah, that's a trick, isn't it? I don't know. I mean, as the show started, I just thought, it's hard to remember, isn't it, where our heads were at. Now we know about it. But I remember back when it started just thinking this is just going to be a pastiche of Bobber. And I was kind of okay with that. I was like, okay, I understand why Bobber's not available to you. And unless you bring him back, then, you can't really go there and everything. So I just expected him to be a clone of Bobber. And I found him to be kind of, people knock the character for kind of making stupid decisions sometimes, or for not being that great at keeping his head above water, because people are always fighting with him and beating him up and stuff. But for me, it just reminds me of the Indiana Jones that we were familiar with in the Indiana Jones Chronicles. He's the guy that's around when other people are doing something more significant. He's the guy that's standing next to the guy, and that can work because, you look at Indy and you think, well, he ended up just being this kind of vehicle for that in the Indiana Jones Chronicles. And although it wasn't very popular, it was quite a clever way of zooting you about the universe about the planet and showing you all these different events in history. So in a way, I sort of see him as being a bit like that. And I kind of like that. He's the guy that gets punched out. It's like, I don't want all my heroes to be superhuman. I quite like the ones that are a bit rubbish, So I expect kind of more of the same going forward. But I don't know about it was a big surprise about the ship, especially post the Hasbro launch, And then by the way, public service announcement. I was looking at it, kind of thinking, am I onto something here? But any ship that you buy from Hasbro is going to blow up shortly afterwards. Because if you look at it, wasn't Jabba's Sandcrawler was the last thing they did in HasLab, right?
Yeah.
And that went boom too. So they're only making ships that blow up, right?
Well, again, the Death Star next.
Yeah, right. But which reminds me, going off at another tangent, didn't Bib Fortuna die in Jabba's forge? Clearly not now, but
everybody says. But I always remember years ago. Way back when the Rebo band are clearly on the barge singing and playing and doing a number. You certainly see Max. I think you see Droopy. But the thing was always that they jumped off the barge before it exploded and they survived. So there was all these little anecdotal stories that you picked up as a kid, like they got out, they were okay. Like you say, I'm sure Bib was on the sail barge. Yeah, I'm second guessing myself now.
He wasn't. He was on there, but I don't know. I don't know. We've no reason to assume any of them got off. All I can assume was it was like when you're at a party and somebody kind of goes, "Oh, we're all out of beer and napkins." And they probably sent Bib off to get some
on the
some more napkins, So it's
speeder bikes.
Never saw it, just scooted off. Right. It was nice to see. It was weird that it was Matthew Wood. It was like, whoa.
That was a good little touch, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he even snuck a little McClunky in there, didn't he?
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah.
So looking at it now, we've had 2 seasons of Mando. We know we've got Boba coming up, and all these other shows, of which the most likely one to come first, I would say, is probably the Bad Batch. I would assume that's probably fairly far down the line, just from the depth of sizzle reel that we saw of it. we've got Andor coming, we're covering all the bases. If you had to pick one, if I could say to you, Paul, you can only pick one. If nothing else comes to fruition, you can pick one, and that's what you get. Which one would you pick right now? Because it'll probably change.
From what?
Everything
From Bad
that's
Batch?
laid out in front of us that could potentially happen. Because that's not to say they all come to fruition. But if what was announced, the Taika film, Rogue Squadron, what's the one thing you'd pick?
It's tricky. I think because we don't really know what they are yet, so I'm looking at it kind of going, I mean, the Acolyte, I'm assuming, is going to be about somebody like Darth Talon, because, George was into that, and maybe, so that's going to be Sith-centric, and I'm into all that, so I'm kind of curious about where they might go there. I'm even excited about the Droids show, because I like the old Droid show.
Oh, I love the Droids.
And it's intriguing to me because of the idea that it's an animation stroke ILM cross. So I'm curious as to what that means. Is it going to be photoreal? I mean, it seems like if ILM involved, it's probably going to be that way. And and the fact it's a TV movie and stuff is an interesting concept, because it's like, all right, if they start making movies for TV, that could open all kinds of possibilities. I know for years we've been talking about how cool it would be to get a Shadows of the Empire TV movie, or a Splinter of the Mind's Eye TV movie or something. So maybe if Droids does well, we could be thinking about, more sort of TV movies. I think that's a cool format for Star Wars. But Rogue Squadron, I'm curious about, because I liked it. Almost feels like a backdoor Rogue One sequel in a way, being, as I said, it's actually set in the future. So it's like, all right, it's not going to be the book era. It's going to be like another generation kind of inspired by that era. So that's, Kenobi, I'm very excited by. I guess it's probably a toss-up between Kenobi and Ahsoka, I think, because I thought they did a great job of Ahsoka. I really liked her appearance in Mandalorian. So, but I'm really excited about Kenobi too, though. Everybody's been asking about, oh, come on, surely Kenobi doesn't leave Tatooine, and I think he's kind of got to, really. But I mean, what do you think, guys? What do you think would take him off the planet? My feeling was either something's happening to Leia, or maybe even something's happening to Baby Yoda, and he knows about it.
We talked about this on a recent episode. That obviously you've got Hayden back as Vader, but I'm thinking Wrath of Khan. Khan and Kirk never meet. It's a remote relationship, if that makes sense, and they're completely at odds when they never physically interact. And I get the sense that Vader can't know too much about Obi-Wan's whereabouts because he could track him or his MO. So I feel that they might be skirting around similar events, but at a distance. So you're seeing two perspectives, and clearly flashbacks as well. I still maintain that Obi-Wan went to Tatooine in his stolen starfighter of General Grievous, and that's the vehicle he'll use to get around in. I've always thought that. So I think that's how he'll get from A to B. He'll be using that ship. So I don't see any reason why he can't. I mean, he communed with Yoda, presumably again communes with Qui-Gon. He's in contact with Bail because they were great friends. So there's definitely contact with the outside world. But Mark made a great point earlier. Sorry to steal your thunder, Mark, but you mentioned how at this point of time, Ben says to Luke, Obi-Wan? I haven't been called that in a long time. So he's crazy old Ben. So the show's called Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he's Ben. So, there's all that aspect as well. So I think there's no reason for him not to leave Tatooine.
Yeah, I mean, I was also thinking, just there are a lot of opportunities there that just feel so golden. You look at it and you think, we've never really had a good look at Alderaan, have we? We've had that shot or two of just Belle sitting around with Baby Leia and stuff. But, I mean, the most time we've ever spent on Alderaan was in the radio shows, having an whole episode about that. But it's not the same as... Yeah, right, and it's not the same as watching it. So I'd kind of... Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't be a bad idea, I think, to pull Leia into it. And especially knowing how Disney's trying to kind of get the focus a bit more on the female characters. It seems to me to make sense that they might kind of go, let's make it about Leia.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Or at least, vouch for consequence, he does leave planet either for whatever reason, be it to go and rescue Leia or something, and then something happens to Luke, and at the end of it, he then realizes that he can't now leave Tatooine again until he's Luke's of a certain age or something. Because it's that whole thing of like, you know, it's like, you know, when you walk out of the kitchen when you've got your potatoes on boiling, you think I'll be all right for 2 minutes, and you come back and the whole place is just covered.
I love that.
So it could be something like that. I mean,
it could even be distraction, Mark, couldn't it? You know, like they could go. We know Kenobi's on Tatooine, but they don't necessarily have any reason to assume that there's a Skywalker there. So if they're starting to smell him out and find out where he is, that it could actually make a lot of sense for him to get the heck off the planet, because all he's going to do is draw in the Empire and potentially put Luke at risk. Whereas if they don't, they have not got a clue that he's there. It's like no problem. But if they have an idea that the hunting for Kenobi might lead to something, then I think he'd totally leave the planet.
It's a really good point, because if you look at the original Star Wars, one of the biggest potential plot cock-ups, if you like, was Luke Skywalker living on Tatooine where his father lived under the surname Skywalker. He really should have been Luke Lars, but he was Luke Skywalker. So
right, I know, and wearing an outfit of a Jedi Knight. True. It's like, wait, what? Someone make an effort, you know. Is it one of those things where it's just like, you know, you got settled in, got laid back? It's a bit like the COVID thing, it'd be stuck in home for ages. So you're like, you know, you might maybe like let things slide a bit, and you just think, I'll just wear tracksuit bottoms again today, it'll be fine. And he's thinking like, I'll just crack out the Jedi outfit for a while because the rest of it needs washing, you know. It'll be fine. And then it's just like he's really comfy in it, and it's just like, what the heck? It's not like the Empire's ever going to come to Tatooine, is it? Come on now.
That's true.
I'll just wear my own Jedi outfit. Plus, she's got really used to wearing it. It's like your favourite pair of boots, isn't it? You know.
Exactly.
But they've got some great opportunities, because obviously, Owen and Ben, there was always that enmity there, and of course Owen and Ben were brothers at one point, weren't they? And they kind of backed off on that for the prequels. But there's definitely storytelling potential. I think you're right. Kenobi's got some real scope. The one I'm looking forward to the most is Andor. That's the one I'm really excited about.
Right. Really? What is it about that one?
Just the era. Apart from that, Cassian was my favourite character in Rogue One, and I'm just really interested to see him. I just think that pre-Scarif, pre-Yavin era of building the rebellion and bringing people in, and I think there's a lot of political intrigue in there as well, because I was thinking about it the other day, that sequence in Rogue One when Jyn basically appeals to them to come on, we've got to go, we've got to take this war to them, rebellions are built on hope and all that whole thing, and it's basically a mini Senate. They had to get consensus within that mini Senate of Republic senators, some of which were up for it and some of which weren't. But they were all part of the rebellion. But some were too nervous and some were, you know what I mean? So I think there's some navigation there. Obviously, Mothma's going to be in it. And I think another point, just because Hayden's turning up at Kenobi doesn't mean Hayden couldn't turn up also in Cassian. With Mon Mothma turning up in Cassian, or in Andor rather, there's no reason why she couldn't turn up in Rangers. So a lot of these actors being announced for certain shows very clearly could cross over into others.
Yeah, I mean, I think I loved Rogue One, and I remember going into it sort of with pretty low expectations actually, and then by the time it got toward the end and all the dogfight stuff, I thought it was the greatest Star Wars I'd seen in years, you know. So I was totally blown away by all the space stuff and really felt myself drawn into that reality, which is what I'm all about. You know, it's weird. I don't have a particular kind of like, I don't lock onto anything and think like, I'm really keen on the spaceships, or I'm really keen on the planets or anything like that. It's just a general, if it just feels like real Star Wars, then I'm there for it and I'm having a good time, you know. And for me, it was like, at last somebody's actually kind of got the dogfight, so they feel like they've got the same weight as the old movie. So I'm hoping that the things that fans have reacted positively to, that they're going to learn from that and kind of make sure that they focus on that stuff. So hopefully, although it sounds like Andor is going to be quite a spy, driven type story, I kind of hopefully we get a good bit of spaceship action too. I think that's what I'd like from a kind of a Rogue One prequel. But yeah, I don't know. There's so much. I mean, I don't know. It's just so exciting. I'm also wondering about how much the Andor and the Lando shows are almost working as a substitute for. I mean, it would be nice if we had a Han and Chewie show. And I know you feel the same way as I do about that, Mark, where it's like for years, you know, I've wanted like a daily style kind of Han Chewie adventures kind of story set before the original trilogy, and they nearly pulled it off, didn't they, with Alden and all that. I mean, we enjoyed it. It was a great movie, but it clearly didn't connect with enough people. But I almost feel now, looking back at it, like it just would have made such a great pilot for a TV show, and you know, I'd have tuned in every week and sure would have loved it. So I'm wondering how much of the lack of success of the Solo movie has led them to maybe think that something like Lando could work as a substitute for that, you know, because obviously you could have Lando and any kind of sidekick they want to put in there. Yeah. You know, I suppose it would be the robot, right?
I think Lobot would be amazing.
No, the robot that he had.
Oh, L3.
You know?
Oh, L3.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the books. Yeah.
But at the same time, you look at that and you kind of go, but then Cassian's got a robot sidekick too.
So yeah. Is Lando? Do we know if Lando's a prequel then?
Well, the stories are that maybe both. It's Billy D as well. So I don't know.
Thing with the bookends.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. I can't. Yeah.
I mean, did you read the Daniel Jose Older book? What's it called? The Last Shot or something? Which is basically I really enjoyed it because it's Lando and Han, but they both kind of cover him as caper in the present day, but then they both have like flashbacks to like 10 or 15 years before that, and they have their own different stories. So it'd be kind of cool if like in a similar kind of way you had maybe the Billy D Lando kind of having to deal with stuff that happened in the past, you know, and so kind of like rather than it just being a bookend, actually really utilizing Billy D, because he was great in Rise of Skywalker. I'd love to see more Billy D Lando.
Yeah, me too. What are you interested in out of all these shows, Mark? What's
me? I'm to be honest, I think I'm a bit like you. I mean, I'm a squadron leader for the Rebel Legion's LC base in the UK, so obviously Rogue Squadron is kind of right. I'm curious about that, but that's probably more from a costume perspective. But then if that's set, the furthest into the future than any other of the other shows, that would be interesting just to see what they do with it. But yeah, Ahsoka as well, because you kind of, and obviously I don't want to take too much stock in the logos, but it had that whole kind of like world between worlds kind of vibe about the iconography of it and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see how much they do with that if they go there, because it's it's kind of a whole dodgy territory of like time travel in Star Wars, and would it work or would it not? So
I've been a little bit more vocal about my criticism of the sequels in the last few years and stuff.
Really?
I know, right. But initially, you'd be amazed how much I'm reining it in, man, I tell you. Really? But amongst friends, I'll lay it out there and complain like anything. But on podcasts and stuff, I've tried to not do it too much. But initially it was because I didn't want to spoil anybody's fun. It's like if everybody's having a good time, then great, But now we've had enough time go by that, I feel like I can just speak my mind, I've made no bones about the fact I'd like him to Thanos snap the whole thing into non-existence, but I think it's a lot of people have said like, well, you couldn't do that because like think about all the fans that really like it and blah blah blah, and I'm not unsympathetic to that, but I just look at it like I do Star Trek, and I know Mark, you'll get this in that the fact that we have these two parallel kind of takes on Star Trek out of necessity, because we just look at it and kind of go, well, Shatner's not going to be running around anytime soon, and we kind of need this young crew to kind of build off going forward and stuff like that. And yet, that reinvention of the brand, if you like, has not really done any harm to the original Star Trek, although you might argue it has not. But it's kind of, it's still there, and if they wanted to, they could just pick it up tomorrow if they wanted to and make a movie that has the original cast in if they're around, So I kind of feel like that way about the sequels, and I dislike them so much. I would like them to just find a way to just circumnavigate them now. And I think there's a sizable chunk of people out there, enough people out there, to kind of warrant it, giving that some serious consideration. But then at the same time, I'm not, so disconnected from reality that I can see Disney rushing into that. I think that they've invested a lot of money in it, and they've made a lot of money from those movies.
Yeah.
Even though, I think it might make sense for them to kind of like shift a gear and kind of go, and right, just simply from story point of view, that if you've got, all this television and this is what we're focusing on for a while, why not do something to kind of rewrite the future as anything is possible? However you do it, whether it's a magic crystal or whatever it is, they find a reason to suddenly say, like, right, we now have no idea what the future holds for us. And that is just a future, but not necessarily the only future. And things could change now because of some occurrence in the Force or however you want to spin it. Because I think then that leaves them wide open and we can't assume anything. I mean, like, if they do that, then it's like even OT characters could die before they reach the sequel trilogy era because now we have no idea what happened, So I think there's a few arguments for it, I think. But
it's a tricky one.
Yeah,
I worry. Yeah. The one thing I never want to see in Star Wars, and the world between worlds, just about got away with it, is time travel. Because it was tricky enough when they, and I understand completely why they did it for story purposes and financially, to wipe away the EU, for example. I get that. I don't buy that it was purely a story decision. I think it was a financial one as well, because they can fill that timeline with brand new books and comics. So it was fiscal as much as anything.
I remember you never not being keen on that at the time, Mark, and I remember kind of going, "Oh, don't worry, it'll be fine." And now I'm telling you, my words kind of going, "Mark was right. What have we lost?"
Everything can be accommodated. Warren. I think, very good. I think everything can be accommodated in a sense that they could have, if they wanted to, they could have made it all work and fit, and they could have found gaps and told other stories. But by the same token, I wouldn't want to completely get rid of anything, especially now that they are at least attempting to make everything canon from a certain point. And it's always going to be the case. I know we've had this conversation, Paul. If Spielberg says, "I'll finally do that Star Wars film," and it contradicts an issue of, Darth Vader Volume 1, who gives a stuff about that? They'll contradict it. It doesn't matter. So they'll cherry pick that as much as they want to. But I think,
hasn't it already, like, Cobb Vanth has already contradicted the book, right? Isn't that a first?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, but I suppose that's the thing, like, I mean, it's like future's always in motion, isn't it? And so it's like, how difficult is it to kind of like, look at that, especially bearing in mind that he is kind of like a side character in a book, like, he's in an interlude. He's not even the main character in that novel. He's just like, just kind of like a vignette kind of cutaway type kind of thing. So, but I mean, I'd be more curious just to see, sod it. Let's use somebody like, I know, for instance, Grogu as an anchor and go 500-600 years in the future and just go, right, okay, you now got an anchor to the past because you've got this 500 or 600-year-old older Yoda-esque character. So there's that middle-aged, exactly, and you kind of got that touchstone of it's kind of familiar, but then the world and the galaxy that he's in, I mean, 500 years is like a huge amount of time, because you think about what happened in the, between Battle of Yavin and Force Awakens. So,
I kind of feel like that's the way to go for sure. I mean, I remember when the Force Awakens first came out. I mean, we went to the premiere together, Mark, didn't we? So, and I was confident enough in Kathleen and Disney's stewardship of the saga that I'd already booked a flight that same night to go see it in the States too. So, like, less than 20 hours later, I was in LA watching it as well, like at Mann's. So I was serious about that movie and had every confidence in it, and I enjoyed it at the time as a kind of like a sensible kind of business decision. But I also had fun with it. I enjoyed it, provided a few things were explained going forwards, and then Dark Shadow was the thing that did it for me. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I was just kind of feel like I remember when Disney first kind of bought the brand. I remember thinking, well, that's really interesting because they've got a lot of money behind them. They've got a lot of skill behind them. And it's a huge company, and I felt it was a great decision, and I was really looking forward to seeing what new people did with Star Wars. I thought, great, But at the same time, I was thinking, there's no company like Lucasfilm out there. There's nobody that can really get in George's shoes. Is his own person, He's got his own unique touch and way of looking at things. So this is going to be different, But then when The Force Awakens came out, I felt, well, this really, for all its shortcomings and anything I could criticise it for, is an amazing accomplishment, because you've got a brand new bunch of people who've never made Star Wars before, have just made a Star Wars movie that's nearly really good, and so for me, I kind of felt like this is great, but at the same time, I had reservations, but I just kind of thought we need to give them time, and I think that my feeling is if JJ had stuck with the whole trilogy, I think it probably would have got somewhere really interesting by the third movie, but I think because things got complicated by 8, I felt like it kind of got a little confused and went off the tracks, but I don't know, where was I going with that? I think for me the TV shows are the place where it's really proven that look, we can make Star Wars like George, we can, and I think slipping into other time zones is not necessarily a bad thing. My feeling is, you're talking about different projects. Do you guys think Taika's project is probably like set way back? It feels like before the Old Republic. It feels like maybe the start of the Jedi or something like that. That's a vibe I'm getting.
That was one of the rumours, wasn't it? That one of the rumours was that they were going to do a story where wasn't it a female character was going to lead the story, and she was like an explorer, sort of charting the expansion, and she was there. So she was sort of there at the discovery of hyperdrive, and there at the discovery of lots of the sort of tentpole things of the saga. That was something I remember reading a while ago. So if he was in charge of that, that could be really quite interesting, because hyperdrive, discovery of the Force, a lot of things kind of happened about 25,000 years ago, didn't they? So there's certain things that you could wrap a story around. I like his style. I love Thor Ragnarok. So as long as it's not.
I like Taika,
exactly. And his episode of Mando was great, and Disney love him, so I think they're going to look after him in that sense. But
he jests that they're going to do something different. The logo's rather kind of weird. Whereas looking at it, kind of going, and it's kind of got that Ben-Hur kind of 1 million years BC kind of vibe to it. So it's like, okay, you took in ancient history here, so it's probably something mythical or something very primitive. So it's like, where are we going with this? So it could be the Star Wars equivalent of cavemen, or it could be the Star Wars equivalent of Ben-Hur, couldn't it?
Or they could flip it, because we could be heading towards the Dark Ages in the timeline post Rise of Skywalker. You could get so far, and like the High Republic has the the great. What was it now? That's it. Well done. Things like that happen. You've just had it in Star Trek with the burn in Discovery Season 3. Some big cataclysm could happen that affects everybody. It's like if the magnetism of the sun changed, none of our electrics would work, sort of thing. So something could happen, and we get cast into a dark. I don't know. I'm spitballing, but I like it. Could happen. Yeah,
I like that, Mark. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. No, they should call you, man.
I'm here. They know where I am.
It's time. Yeah. We need setting movies. It's got to happen.
That's the dream. I just want a poster on a wall. That's all I want. I want a poster on a wall in a scene. That's all I want.
There's room for that.
But I think the future's bright. And one final thing before we wrap up, I would love to know. You can't know. Nobody can know. Who could know? But to your mind, having followed this series since day one, and being a student of Star Wars as much as a fan of it, what do you think George is making of this expansion of the story now? We're getting to the point where technology, like he did with Phantom Menace, when he couldn't make Phantom until Jurassic Park happened, but that was a technical thing. Now we've moved even beyond that with stagecraft and face replacement technology and such. So we really are at a point where all the tools are there, and we've had decades of people arguably using them more judiciously than maybe he did initially, because it was a brand new toy box. And now we can tell any story we want to do. What do you think he would make of this period of Star Wars history?
Oh, that's a kind of a flip. I was thinking more about the technology.
All of it. The history online as a story, but also Star Wars in the 21st century. That the opportunities that are laid out to filmmakers now.
I think George is probably enjoying watching Star Wars. I think he's certainly enjoying watching Dave's Star Wars. And as soon as you saw that Ahsoka episode, and it was so Kurosawa heavy, so John Ford heavy, I kind of felt like this really is drawing on what George liked rather than just Star Wars. It's pulling from the source, So I felt like that really nailed it. So I'm sure he's really enjoying it, and I'm sure he's probably like, he loves attack. It's clear, you look back at the old documentaries of George kind of getting excited about being able to split edit a shot and kind of, take one performance from one take and take a performance from another take and all that kind of stuff. And he liked to fiddle, and he liked the to pioneer stuff. So I think the fact that Star Wars happens to be the project that's really kind of embraced the whole virtual shooting setup sort of situation, I'm sure is something that he's delighted with. And I'm sure he's sophisticated enough to look at these shots and kind of go, look at that. It looks like they're really there, and still appreciate that aspect of stuff, So I think I'm sure he's really enjoying this show. I think going forward, some of it will interest him more than other stuff, and some of it will probably disappoint him. Some of it will make him happy, like anybody else. But I'm sure he's excited about it. And, he loves film, and he's into movies, like full stop. So I'm sure he'll be very excited to see what other people do with what he's come up with. But and I'm sure Baby Yoda has been a bit of a revelation to him.
Yeah, totally.
You got to meet him, so that's
biggest star in Hollywood.
I'm still getting used to the whole Grogu thing. I can't,
Yeah.
I'm still Baby Yoda, but yeah.
Brilliant.
I think he'll enjoy it. I'm interested in seeing. I think George will be excited about Bad Batch too, oddly, because he clearly was into the whole. I mean, to me, it just felt like, okay, I don't care what you call this. This is Clone Wars continues, but it's like, they've had to call it something different because Clone Wars is over, So, but to me, it just looks identical, and I don't have a problem with that. And I think if they keep standards as high as they did with Clone Wars, then I think we're in for a good ride. It's really intriguing me where they're going to go with that, though. It's like, because I'm not particularly excited about the clones themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they'll grow on me as time goes by. I'll just like the individual characters, but I'm more interested in the world around them, to be honest. I want to know what's kind of going on, because essentially it's like they've hit that period, haven't they, where we're in Revenge of the Sith. So we're like mid Revenge of the Sith is where we start. So are we going to, is the first season going to trip into whatever the live action projects have got kind of coming down the pipe? Is it going to get as far ahead as something like Mandalorian? I mean, could we be seeing Bad Batch in 5 years and there's Mando? I mean, I don't know.
That's a fascinating thought, because we've got Fennec turning up, haven't we? So, there's overlap.
Yeah, Fennec's in it. Yeah.
Happy days.
What are you guys expecting from the Acolyte? You got any opinions about that?
I like the fact they've stuck it at the end of the High Republic era, and that from what they've said, that's quite an expansive period of Star Wars history as well. If they're saying, if what I read was true, and it is sort of half a century before Phantom, then you've got that's quite an expansive, like they say, High Republic. So it's them essentially at their best. So I think that could be a lot.
Don't you? I feel like that end of things, when I first saw High Republic, I have to admit, I was a little cynical about the whole idea, because to me it just like watered down the Old Republic, and I'd rather they just went there and went back a few thousand years rather than looking about in the 200 year zone. But it's all fresh territory, and it makes it possible for them to do something really brand new, and so I'm all for that. That looks really interesting. But what intrigues me is like, why only 50 years? It's not that far back,
No, that's it.
So I look at that and kind of go, is this their attempt to make a prequel show? Because even though it's 50 years earlier, and obviously there's like, what is the 30 years between the prequels and the sequel and the original trilogy?
Phantom to New Hope, yeah.
32. So in a way, it's a similar leap, but you'd kind of expect the design to kind of lean into the prequels a little bit, or maybe even a lot. So like, could this show turn out to have a strong kind of prequel vibe? I think there's room for a prequel-y show.
Yeah, totally. I mean, could this actually be the way they kind of shoehorn the whole Darth Plagueis kind of story in?
Yeah.
Because, Palpatine's around at that time.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
There are all kinds of rumours on the internet, and you can rely on those, But I've been hearing sort of rumours about Naboo for a while, which I thought was really interesting. And so for me, I've always wondered about Naboo and thought, after the prequel trilogy, right at the end there, you've got all of a sudden the Emperor is now in residence, and Palpatine has got his feet under the table, and he can kind of, he can call a shot. So I just kind of look back and think, what's he annoyed about? You know, this is an incredibly vindictive and cruel character. You know, what would be the result of him kind of coming out on top? He may have been born on Naboo, but would he want to kind of get one up on them? Or
Well, he I believe Naboo wasn't that a target for Operation Cinder, which is his.
Yeah,
kind of,
that's the story, isn't it? But
yeah, that was his middle finger to the galaxy when he died.
So is that canon now then, Mark? Did Naboo get it?
No, I don't think so. No, I think that it didn't get it. I mean, the comics have kind of visited it there a couple of times, but because was it Captain Tanaka or something? Like he became a moth.
Panaka turned, yeah.
Really? Yeah. Panaka, that's it. So Panaka, he became a moth, and I think that might have been in Queen Shadow. I think it might have been in the Padme book. I think.
Right.
And he gets blown up or something. Oh no, that's it. It's the Princess of Alderaan book, because he sees Leia and I think he makes a connection to like Padme, and then he gets blown up. That's all I can kind of remember. And I was kind of quite gutted because like there was something there that I was like, oh, this could be a really interesting kind of thread to follow, but they didn't follow it. But yeah, you would kind of think if you were the Emperor, you know, you'd go around, kind of clean house a little bit and kind of tie up those loose ends, and anything that can kind of connect you to like your previous life. Surely that's like, you know, Gangster 101, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. You know, it's got type
visually for me, you know, I know, you know, because George was very much motivated by his, you know, by the way he looked at things. By the way, I'm disappointed in Captain Vanaka because I've worked with Hugh Corshi and he always seemed like such a nice man. Can't believe he turned. But so yeah, being very motivated by visuals, you know, I kind of look at Naboo and I've often thought, you know, it's nearly really beautiful, but there's a certain kind of modelly quality to it that doesn't quite get there for me. Although in the games and stuff, I've seen some versions of Naboo that I thought were amazing. So for me, I'd like to see Naboo, you know, ruined. I'd like to see the plants all overtaking everything, and you know, like some really beautiful, romantic wreck of a city. I think it could look incredible with like birds flying out of the ruins and. You know, the rivers and the lakes all overgrown and everything, and all the public places all got flowers all over the ground.
Yeah,
and
Logan's Run, kind of.
Yeah, I just think it could look amazing, you know. So for me, visually, I find that an exciting possibility that they might go back there. But I've definitely heard rumours that they're talking about, like, potentially having a Naboo fighter in there or like the odd Naboo prop. And clearly there's a little bit of prequel-y stuff popping up every now and again when you get things like pit droids and stuff showing up on Tatooine. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start drifting in that direction a bit. And I think it's not, from the sound of things, it's not something that they've explored extensively even in the EU. So feels like good territory to me. I think I'd love them to end up there on some show or other.
This is it, isn't it? There's certain familiar planets that, I mean, we've been back to Mustafar a few times, and you know we're regularly looking at Tatooine. We're there again at the end of season 2, and certain worlds that you know, even in Rise of Skywalker, you glimpsed a momentary glimpse of Endor, and then the scene at the end with Wicket. So you know you have kind of skirted around different places, but with these, like I say, these live action shows, you really could go back and have an actual storyline on Naboo, or get to Nar Shaddaa. I mean, like you mentioned it, that would be a phenomenal place to see. You know, in live action.
Yeah, I'd love that, man. I'd love that.
You know, the Brian Daly books, some of the places that are in the books there. You know, go to Secaucus, well, Minbun, isn't it? So, you know, but you know what I mean? There's different places that you can go to that you could really flesh out that could be fascinating.
Here's a question for you. You know, when everyone was talking about, you know, when I was talking with the RFR boys and we were exploring who's the Jedi that might turn up, and we're all like going, no way will it be Luke, but it kind of should be. And everybody's thinking like it's going to be a real bummer when they take Grogu away from Mandalorian if it's anybody less than Luke. I mean, just our Jedi turns up and takes him away, it'd be kind of sad, you know. But being as it's Luke, he kind of, I don't know, he gets a pass, doesn't he? You kind of go, it's Luke. Of course he wants to be with Luke, you know. So it makes it a tiny bit less heartbreaking. So while we're exploring that, we're looking at things like Quinlan, Voss, and could it be a Sith? We don't know. He's still alive. Could a Sarge Ventress still be around, even though she died in the EU? And you know, all these characters started popping up that we were speculating about. But I mean, you know, there's so much room for laying in some expanded universe stuff, and I think, you know, going contrary to the common thing about people being saying about fan service being a bad thing, which I don't agree with. I think you could overdo it, but I think to a certain extent, I think fan service is to be encouraged. I think if something really resonates with fans, then I think it's an indication that there's something cool about that character that people really like. Whereas, you could just kind of ignore fan service and do your own thing, but they've already put stuff out there that people really like or are indifferent to. So I think it makes sense to learn from that and pull stuff in. And I'm thankful that they already are. But I mean, thinking about characters that could kind of cross that divide, I was thinking it would be great to see Carl Catan, but I don't know if you guys think there are any other wasted opportunities where you think I really wish that character would come into the shows somehow. Is there anybody that
I did a podcast the other day and somebody said, what EU character would you like to bring in? And I said Galandro. I'd like to see a full-on, proper, dangerous gunman turn up. A hitman or, So I think Galandro would be great to throw in as a character. So,
What about you, Mark?
To be honest, I was going to say Carl Catan or Talon Card. But if you bring Talon Card, and you've got to bring Shadow Decul, who's was it Mistral Shadow Guard, because they were quite cool. And they didn't really kind of do much because there's quite a sad story behind them. They kind of had this kind of they were working just to kind of get the whole kind of family and village out of poverty and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to anything as long as it's done well and it doesn't feel like it's shoehorned in. Then it works really, as far as I'm concerned. And I think they've done it so many times where they've dipped into the EU well, be it for characters or little nods and stuff like that. But that's where you should kind of be referencing stuff. I mean, it's like Leslie Headland. She's she had that the interview where she said that she kind of refers back to the the Star Wars Atlas and stuff like that. Which,
else I'd like to see turn up. It would be a nice surprise. Would be Dirge.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Mm.
And I mean, especially considering his biology, I mean, it's possible. I mean, you kind of feel like a little worm of him still survived. That'd be enough for him to come back.
Yeah.
Judging from the Gendy show, you look at it and kind of go, well, I mean, wouldn't that be amazing if Dirge turned up in the middle of Kenobi? That'd be mad.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I mean, because I kind of never really get the feel that in that series that he kind of really got the end resolution. It always felt like they just kind of left it
How did Asajj die in the books? I never read that.
Dark
God,
Disciple?
Get it?
So that's Dark Disciple, which actually, to be fair, is a really good book. I really praised it. Yeah,
it's based on one of the Clone Wars scripts, right?
Yeah, it's basically like a romance story between them.
Right, like a tango or something.
Yeah, and I can't remember because I would have read it when it first came out.
Yeah, putting you on the spot.
No, that's right. But I think, did she get shot or something? I mean, because I can remember I was kind of jumping between reading the book and listening to the audiobook, and the death scene was I listened to the audiobook, and it just kind of went on for forever. One of those, where she just kind of was in his arms, and it just felt like it was just kind of really stretched out, and it's like, okay, come on, just die, come on, just
the Elvis death scene.
Yeah.
No, really, I'm really dying. No, I'm really any minute now. Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, I just kind of think that I really liked Ventress as a character. I thought she was very appealing. When she first showed up in the Gendy show, I was like, I don't know about this. It's an old Dermot Power design, which is kind of nice, and then it took 5 minutes for me to kind of go, I actually really like this character. She's really fun. And the fact that she can kind of hold her own, and they've got that weird kind of relationship thing going on between her and Kenobi and stuff, where they're kind of flirtatious in a really kind of, insulting way. I thought it was a nice play on that old-fashioned kind of, 40s, rivalry that you get Han and Leia doing in Empire.
Catherine Hepburn thing.
Yeah. So I'd love to see Ventress show up in something, because I think, with the right actress, she could be amazing. I think, somebody really looks right. So they'd be my pick, I think. And Carl Catan, I think mainly it's because I just like the idea of him being a friend of Luke's. That's part of it, I think. Is the fact that he's almost a surrogate Luke. He's like Luke's mate. So it's, I don't know, there's something about that that's appealing. Would you guys rather it was just like they replaced Luke with a different actor than get a CG one? I mean, I know there's all this talk about.
Oh, I mean, the thing is, when I saw it, there's so much emotions when I saw Luke in chapter 16. But I think when I watched it the second or third time, I was like, there's just enough screen time. They've just given them enough screen time whereby I think any more, and I think it could start to maybe fall apart a little bit in terms of like it's going to be harder to sell it. But then again, that's just like, this could be version 1, so what happens when it's version 2 or 3? But yeah, I don't know. There's, I mean, it worked for Solo. Yeah. I mean, I totally brought Alden as Han Solo, really.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it was only when you kind of stop and think about it, but then, there was enough kind of mannerisms and kind of like affectations that Han Solo kind of has, but I'm not really sure, other than being a little bit whiny, what kind of affectations Luke has, if you're with me.
I don't know. I mean, I think he. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I kind of feel like Luke does have a lot of character, especially when Return of the Jedi, when he's slowly becoming this kind of mystical.
Yeah,
I think just having him as a CG character to me just said that this is your Christmas treat. We're giving you this now, but don't expect this dude every week. I don't think you'll see him regularly. I think if they were planning on Luke being seen, for example, in the Ahsoka show regularly, I think they would have found a young actor, or they would have. I mean, I said it the other day, because Sebastian Stan, everybody says it, there's definitely a likeness. And at this point in time after Jedi, there's probably only 3 or 4 years age gap between the actor and the character, so you could do it. But he's busy doing Falcon and Winter Soldier. He's pretty busy already, so there's practicalities as well, isn't there? So.
I don't know. God, I'd love to see Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker. I really would. I think he could pull it off.
Oh, yeah,
I think if Mark was on set to help him, and I don't think Mark would have a huge problem with that. I don't think he's... I think he likes movies, he likes TV shows, and he likes fantasy, and
he's a comic book man, isn't he? So
he's similar. He knows that different people have played Flash Gordon, and I think if especially if a lot of consideration is being given to Mark's performance and trying to get it as close as they can, which I think people would require. But it's a little like having Peter Mayhew turn up for the Clone Wars, where you think. We all respected that as being Chewbacca, even though he wasn't mocapped or anything. Particularly, I don't think
it just has that legitimacy, doesn't it?
But you feel it, and I think we'd all feel the same way about Luke. I think if he was recast, I think we might not realise it. But if Mark suddenly showed up and said, "I'm all for this. This is a cool idea, and we've worked something out and it looks good," I think I don't know. I could go with it, but I'll at the same time, did you see the deep fake do-over that somebody did? Yeah. People always say, how come people can deep fake it and it looks better than ILM? And you have to remind people, like, you can deep fake the thing that ILM have made.
Yeah.
If you don't have that in the first place, you get a very different result. So, but at the same time, I look at it and kind of go, it does look nice. It does look a lot more like Mark. Just takes it that extra inch.
Yeah,
but it's been interesting because I looked at the I think the same guy did a talking deep fake too, and you look at that and you kind of go, it just takes it that extra inch that makes a difference. But it's strange how subtle it is. It's just a highlight here, a highlight there. A little bit of lost focus in certain areas and stuff. It just takes it that little extra yard of looking real, doesn't it?
It's very clever.
I always feel like I wish ILM had done that before they kind of threw it out in the world. I feel like it was nearly there.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier. Now everything's on Disney Plus. They could reconvene the season and go, we've actually come up with this extra pass almost that will make it look this much better. And whoever at Lucasfilm and Disney goes, just do it. Just change the stream or just do it. And then next time you watch Chapter 16 and it's that little bit better. And I think that's the tech advances, but because we're consuming our entertainment in a completely different way now in 2020, 2021 going forward, that's a potential option that you could literally, it could be a click. Do you want to watch the original version or do you want to watch the bang up to date refreshed version or whatever?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
it's tricky though, isn't it? Because I don't know how practical that is, in terms of giving people too many options. But I'm excited about. It's a lovely big world to play in, and when I think about things like Dirge and stuff showing up, that gets me excited. I think about how would that look? Be some dude, like some 7 foot tall dude in massive suit of armor that can, mutate his body and stuff. That's kind of a wild idea for a bounty hunter, And you look at a lot of stuff, you see it in animation, you think, that's kind of cool. And then you see it in live action and go like, wow, that's really cool, So that leap, I think, across platforms sometimes can have a surprising effect, You think a character's all right and you see it in live action and it's like way cooler than you thought it was going to be,
Well, Marvel have proved it can be done.
I don't know.
They've took comic characters and made them completely convincing.
Yeah. I'm glad they're not embarrassed as well. Like a lot of the Marvel that we have now, I kind of feel like it owns the fact that it's a comic stuff, whereas I felt like a lot of the X-Men movies are kind of embarrassed about where they come from,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just wearing black suits, not owning it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anybody else you'd like to see come back? I mean, I know it's a short list, but, if they're going to bring back OT characters as their younger selves, is there anybody you'd like
I'd love
to
see Leia. I mean, I know people will say it's too soon, it's sacrilegious and everything else, but to me personally, I think in the same way that you saw those images of Harrison talking to Alden about taking on the role of Hamill, and clearly I think the same with Hamill. If they came to Mark and said, we want to do a CG Luke because it's essentially an Easter egg, it's a gift for the fans, and it's a one-off thing, and will you do it? And he's, of course I'll do it. That's one thing, but I think if they'd have come to him, like you just said, and said, well, Sebastian Stan, everybody knows Sebastian, we'd like him to inhabit the role, will you help him do it? Again, like you just said, I think he would have gone for that. Carrie's not around, but I don't foresee her being... Precious isn't the right word, but you know what I'm saying?
No.
She's had her run as Leia. She's done those extra films. If she'd have still been here now, she'd have done all 3 movies. Rise of Skywalker would have been a different film if Carrie had been around. So we thought of it
absolutely.
And I think she probably would have done. Okay, well, I can't play 18 anymore, can I? So pass it over.
It's difficult, isn't it, to say, because it's like it shouldn't be our decision and stuff like that. But it's just interesting to think of as a fan. Explore it. And I mean, when there was some talk about having to re-record dialogue potentially with Carrie and stuff, I thought what surprised me was it didn't occur to anybody to call her sister. There's one of her. She's got a couple of sisters, right?
Yeah,
one of her sisters sounds exactly like her.
Oh, really?
So it's like, but obviously not young Leia, and she's not an actress. But if it's just a couple of lines, I could have seen them going there. Probably more. Yeah, it's probably more sensitive that they've done it the way that they did it. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know how she'd feel about it. I'm sure a daughter probably knows how she would feel about it. So
we were expecting, Solo and Rogue One, the Star Wars stories. We thought they'd be the venue to expand on these things. And of course, Disney Plus has exploded the way it has, and COVID's happened as it has, and the whole focus has shifted to television now. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny. I mean, I thought, obviously working in the film industry, I was thinking my work's just going to dry up because I can't get to the studio, can't work on a normal set. Like what's going to happen? And then all of a sudden, I think as a result of Star Wars, starting getting calls from Netflix and stuff are really interested in exploring the whole kind of virtual environment situation. So I'm designing a bunch of virtual sets for a few projects. And never could have called that at the start of COVID, just I think like everybody else, I was very worried about what was going to happen work-wise. And then it turns out I think a lot of people are really embracing this idea that you can work with freelancers and potentially, work in virtual environments and stuff. It's quite amazing. I mean, one of the projects I'm working on, there are actors in 3 separate countries working on the same set.
Wicked. That's cool.
Which is crazy, and they're just I mean, it's quantifiable. You say the light needs to be there, camera needs to be this height, and using this lens, and nobody's going to know. I mean, it's just going to look like all the actors are in the same location at the same time, and the set doesn't even exist as a real thing. That's crazy. When you think about all the struggle they had in the 70s for getting anything to happen, and now we've got crate dragons burrowing their way through mountains, and Slave One flying around like it's. I mean, let's call it like it is. I mean, you look at the effects of Slave One, and they're way superior to the stuff we saw in the movies, which was amazing for its time, But now I look at the interior of the Slave One, and I'm kind of, wow, look at that! It's moving like in a centrifuge, and isn't that incredible? So yeah, I'm really excited about like what moments we wouldn't have seen until this time, when technology is. I mean, because although we talk about the Star Wars shows being expensive, I mean, even so, like a 10 million TV budget is not a movie budget. you know, and even though you're often only getting 25 minutes or so, it's still like times it by 4. You're still not up in the big budget blockbuster kind of department. But to me, I just forget that I'm not watching something that's just the same. Have you encountered anybody sort of complaining about the quality of the effects or anything like that? Because, you know, people don't necessarily understand, do they, that this is a TV thing. I mean, you do get people with expectations, expect it to be the same as a movie, because we kind of know what we expect from Star Wars. I mean,
hello, this is Sam Whitwer, and you are listening to Fantha Tracks.
I tell you what, I mean, I've come up with a drinking game, which is basically you watch for Mandalorian, and you've got to figure out where the volume starts and where the actual live set finishes.
Yeah. Good luck with that one.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's sometimes you just go, I have no idea, and a couple of times you can go, yeah, it's probably going to be there because where the shots are kind of composed and stuff. But it's just crazy. It's just absolutely bonkers. And to think, you know, we probably wouldn't have got all this kind of stuff if maybe Lucas hadn't have sold it to Disney, you know, and they just pumped all their money in.
Yeah, I'm glad of it. I mean, what's really weird for me is I was working on one of these projects for Netflix, and just the other day, and I was trying to put a set together, and you know, there are all kinds of issues to do with. Well, I can't talk about it, but the long and short of it is that because I was in that place trying to construct something that people are going to be shot on in front of and all that, you know, I was working on this thing, just kind of thinking. And my head was in that space. And then I was watching the episode with Bill Burr, you know, the one with the truck.
The Believer, yeah.
The Believer, yeah. I was watching that. So it's one of those things a little bit like, you remember when Tron came out? I'm sorry for jumping around a bit. You remember when Tron came out? I remember going to see Tron and then coming out of the cinema, and all of a sudden it was like everything was on some kind of a vertex. Like all the lampposts were in a line, and
yeah,
you know, it was almost like a CG reality because my head had gone to that place. And it was a bit like that for me, where I was trying to construct a 3D set, you know, that they're going to import into this environment. And then I was looking at the Bill Burr episode, just kind of going, just look at these things that they've made. I mean, that truck, like, the truck alone is like this hugely complex vehicle, even though it's modular. You know, I was looking at it kind of going, they've even, if you look at the back of the truck, right, this is the difference between ILM and a lot of their peers. Looking at a truck and oh my God, there's more dirt up one side, and then I realised it's a 2-lane like road, so it's going to get more mud on one side. That's just what's going to happen, and they've thought about that, you know. And the average viewer just isn't going to notice, but like there you go, the left side headlamp's got more mud on it, or do you know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah,
and, it's
totally,
just, and looking at the connecting linkages, and on the back of all the chairs, there's all this equipment that you get inside tanks and stuff like that. You know, and all those objects inside the cab need to be designed too and stuff. Just the design level on this show is just off the chart, especially when you compare it to stuff that we were getting in the UK in the 70s, you know. Like Blake 7, where you're lucky if they're not wearing Kawasaki overalls or, right? Or, you know, something that you recognise. But, yeah, incredible show.
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate, I think, right now for Star Wars fans, given that the depth of content that's come in and the quality, clearly Stagecraft has made a phenomenal difference. And the fact that Disney are, I mean, they own it, but they're buying into it in the sense that these projects are being pitched and they're taking them on. Obviously, Disney Plus needs content, but so much stuff to be, at this point, greenlit. Whether they all come to fruition is another thing. But if they do, good grief. I mean, we've got half a decade of content right there.
It's crazy. And I think we're looking at the next couple of years, aren't we? I don't think... I don't know. I don't know how long this stuff's going to take to land, but I don't think they'll be talking 3 years ahead. I suppose they might be.
It's all good. It's all good. It's going to keep us busy.
I think two and a half, maybe. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think is their least priority, lowest priority?
Out of those projects?
Oh. Yeah, what do you reckon? That's a weird question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like I'm wondering what they're worried about the least. You know,
worried about the least. That was
yeah, you know, kind of what they're in a rush to launch. You know, it's like, well, we can leave that until toward the end. You know,
I don't know.
I also wondered.
Sorry,
I'm leaping around a bit. I was also wondering, like, do we know for a fact that all of these shows that Dave and John are working on, do we know for a fact that they're all live action? What if the Rangers of the Republic turns out to be animated?
That's a good
thought.
Yeah,
could be
that'd
weird.
Be interesting.
I mean, has anybody said? I mean,
No. It'd be interesting to see them. I mean, Marvel sort of did it a little bit with animation overlapping with live action, and different shows, different sort of franchises. Different franchises have done it. I think Star Wars could do it. They could certainly do it because we've had animated characters come into live action, and now we've had Fennec go the other way. So they're making a very strong point of crossing those streams. So yeah, I don't see any reason why they couldn't, just to keep it fresh and keep it different, and because.
I still think that the real goal pot is that immediately after Return of the Jedi, what's next, the rebellion thing. That's, to me, there's gold there, But it's like how they accomplish that is another thing, because obviously you've got all these characters that have now aged, so it's like, do you replace them? Do you synthesize them somehow? Do you make it animated? So for me, I think if they want a really successful animated show, I think the sweet spot for me is like. Literally, the Ewok celebration ends, and a new animated show starts. I think because that's such ripe territory for me. I think a lot of old school fans certainly would feel that way. But and I know you guys, like, you can enjoy a Marvel comic, like the 70s Marvel comic, as much as I can occasionally, even though they're kind of daft now when you look at them. But I think something that still works about those is that sense of family that you got from that. I think like that idea that there's a whole bunch of them together and that they're surviving together. There's a certain kind of closeness to that it wasn't always even in the movies, And but there's something appealing about that. And I know Disney likes that family kind of aspect. They like that in their shows to the point where sometimes it can be a little sentimental, So I could see the appeal of doing a show that was about Luke, Leia, and Han, as a proper family, and kind of taking that out of, straight off the back of Jedi. I'd love to see that as an animated show. I think it'd be great.
I mean, that's one thing that me and Mark have talked about is the Star Wars Visions, that 10 animated kind of shorts. Yeah. If that's a way of getting some soft pilots in for some of his stuff, you could have something like that easily. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's intriguing to me too. I think like with a lot of anime, what stops me from getting into it is I think it's often style over substance. Yeah. Where I kind of go, this looks great, but like I'm not really sure I'm massively engaged with the story necessarily, or but there's no reason it couldn't be, and I think it's going to be. I'm expecting that one to feel a little bit like Star Wars Tales, where it leaps about all over the place.
Yeah,
because especially if it is 2D animation and they're not locked into assets and how many assets have we got, stuff like that. They can just draw whatever they want. So, hopefully they'll cast the net really wide and travel a lot of time zones, and that'd be good.
It's whatever we get is more than we ever thought we'd get 8 years ago.
Right, I know, man. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Happy days.
I always go back to that. Go back and tell yourself as a kid, what's going. Watch the reaction. Like, what? There's a Lando show and an Andor show and a Kenobi show and a Sith show and an Ahsoka show and a Lando show. It's all to do with the execution,
isn't it? If you wrote it down on paper, you'd go, oh yeah, Boba Fett turns up, then Slave One turns up, then they talk about Thrawn, and then Ahsoka turns up, and then Luke turns up, and there's little baby Yoda, and you look at it on paper and go, what a load of rubbish, and yet.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Totally. And then the execution of it is so well done and so well presented that you completely buy into it. Brilliant.
Definitely.
Well, thanks, Paul, for giving us way more time than we expected.
Thanks, Mark. Sorry for rambling.
We loved it.
Exciting times, aren't they?
We love chewing over this stuff. So you're welcome back anytime, mate. And have a good Christmas.
You too.
So thanks to Paul for coming on. That was awesome, and it was all arranged really last minute, so it's just fantastic he was able to fit us in. If you've got any comments or questions or any kind of feedback from today's episode or any other episodes, you can get in touch with us. And as always, Mr. Newbold is going to tell you how you can do it.
I am. So if you want to be a part of the action to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free, cost nothing, Fanthatracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. We've got one question left in the bag and then we're dry, so we need more questions in. Ask us anything, we will talk about anything. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, please, a 5-star one would be nice, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. And be sure to watch Good Morning Tatooine, which is our weekly live news show on Fanthatracks Facebook Facebook every Sunday evening at 9 o'clock UK time, which then hits YouTube, Panther Tracks YouTube, Panther Tracks TV, and the site very shortly soon after.
Mark, you have a great Christmas. Send our best wishes to Ruth and the rest of the family. And I guess I will see you some point after Christmas when we can all pick the bones over the gallery and whatever else comes our way.
Yes, absolutely. Say hello to Karen, say hello to the guys, and you have a good time too. Don't eat too much turkey. And yes, we will reconvene, talk Disney Gallery, which will be our last episode of the year, weirdly enough. We'll be heading out of 2020. That's not unwelcome.
Yeah, sigh of relief there.
Big sigh of relief. See you next time.
Take care.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.